think about 1993, 94, I got a video game. I don't know if it was for Christmas or for my birthday, but it was Sim Earth. And I just vaguely remember like a purple screen. And I just didn't know what I was doing. And so I didn't even think about Sim Earth ever again. And probably to this day, I still probably wouldn't have fun playing it. Had no idea that there was another sim game, such as SimCity, out. You know, I was the usual video game consumer, which was Super Mario and that kind of stuff. And so years went by. The summer of 97, let's just say some bad things were happening within my family. Me and my younger brother, Dean, were living in a different city in a trailer. My dad was living at the house still, and that's where all the video game systems were. It was kind of like an impromptu move, so there really wasn't much there. Like, I brought my boombox and some tapes and some CDs, and we had a TV, and that was about it. And so we were staying with our mom most of the time. Moved into this place, didn't have video games or whatever, so we just started playing outside. And I see this kid a few trailers down. I put two and two together, and I realized this kid went to our school. Why is he out here now? And it's like, oh, he must have just moved too. So I introduce myself and I say, hey, you went to the school I went to. We get to talking, we become friends, and, you know, we play football and, you know, catch out in the front yard or whatever. And the reason why he was out here in the trailer park now was because of the fact that his dad caught his mom cheating on him, and so his dad got kicked out, and he moved into the trailer there. And this kid, his name was Dennis, went along with his dad because he said, yeah, my mom didn't want nothing to do with me. She went off and got her own life. She said she didn't want nothing to do with me or my dad. So we just go home, and I'd just, you know, sit in the room and listen to the 5 CDs I had. But then it came to a point where I talked to Dennis about video games. And he was like, oh, I got a Super Nintendo, but I don't play it anymore because I hang out with those kids in the trailer park all the time. And yeah, video games are for kids. It's funny, this like 9-year-old, 10-year-old telling me video games are for kids. So he wound up lending me his Super Nintendo because he didn't have no use for it anymore. And me being kind of like a homebody and a geek, oh, video games, yes, something to do in this trailer park besides stare at the wall and listen to the same CD every day. And so he lended me a Super Nintendo and 3 games. Now, one of the games was like a football game I just didn't care about. Another game was Disney's Aladdin, which is amazing. It's an amazing game for the Super Nintendo. And this game called SimCity. He put the Super Nintendo down on the floor there in our house, and we hooked it up, and he was like, all right, I got these 3 games here. I know how to play the sports game, but I'm not into it. I know Aladdin. And I was like, SimCity. I was like, I don't know what that one's all about. He's like, oh, well, I'll pop it in real quick. And he popped it in, and he showed me how to play it. And I was like, oh, this looks like, that reminds me of that Sim Earth game I had, but this is different. But Dennis just showing me that little bit and showing me how fun it could be. Man. And he's like, okay, first what you want to do is you want to put down a power plant. And he did that. And he's like, now you need to put some residential down so you could have people live in. And then you need to put down some commercial right next to it. And then after the commercial, you put some industrial. And we put it all together with some roads. And then you put... So he showed me the very basics of how to set up the game. And then he sent me on my way and he left. And just him giving me that 30-second tutorial, I was off to the races. It like totally rewired my 11-year-old brain to think like video games could be more in depth than just jump over this, hop over this hole, duck, you know, that kind of stuff. And so the rest of my summer, any chance I had to get my hands on a Super Nintendo controller, that's what I would be playing. And now I had no strategy of how to play the game at the time. Dennis showed me just a little bit of how to get started, but through trial and error, I kind of strategized and got myself up to a city, and it was just a fun little challenge for me. Early morning, 8 o'clock, when no one else is awake yet, and the morning light's just coming in, and it's dark inside the house, playing SimCity till it was time for us to go somewhere, go grocery shopping or something. And besides just the game, getting immersed in the world and just really getting into it, the music itself, the soundtrack, was just really calming, really nice, peaceful kind of stuff. And yeah, man, I just played so much SimCity at that time. Towards the end of the summer, my parents got back together, and it was time for me to leave the trailer park after being there for 3 or so months. And I remember unhooking the Super Nintendo, giving Dennis back his Super Nintendo and SimCity and all the games. And I said, "Here you go, man." He said, "Why are you giving this back to me?" I said, "Well, my parents are back together and we're leaving here." And he was like, "Oh, okay. Well, all right then." I was like, "Yeah, okay, I'll see ya." And that was the last time I ever saw Dennis. And I think back now and it's like, man, what a really cool dude. Even though he had no use for video games and he was too cool for video games, he was that nice to hang out with some kid that just moved into the neighborhood and really took the time, let him borrow the Super Nintendo, show me the games. And, that was really nice of him. And I wish I could thank him. I don't know, I have to look him up on Facebook sometime. I don't even know his last name. I just know his name is Dennis. Yeah, so that was my first experience with SimCity. And I had a Super Nintendo back at the house when we moved back in. So the first thing I did when I moved back, I was like, I'm getting SimCity. And so then my love for SimCity branched on forever. I was just sitting on a different piece of carpet playing SimCity back at my old house. And so SimCity is always that game where I always feel at home with. I could play it wherever, and I'll always just be taken back to that trailer, sitting on the carpet, just staring at that screen and playing it for hours and hours on end, and just completely loving it.